thank you very much for watching my channel and my show and all the other things that you support. I really am grateful. I've got an opportunity to spend some time with Sam Paredes again from Gun Owners of California. Sam is always a joy and always incredibly informative. And we've got a lot to talk about here. So let's get right to it. Sam, thank you very much for being part of the show. I really appreciate it.
Joe, thank you. I treasure every opportunity I get to talk with you. You're intelligent, you're smart, you're right, because you believe the way I do.
I love it. Well, you're probably right.
and it is an honor.
I thought we'd start with federal first because I see I saw a story the other day about Judge Reinhardt dying, passing away in the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. And I don't know they said that President Trump has 8 possibilities to appoint people to that court. And I was wondering if you had any comment about that, or if you think that would be, I mean, is that actually going to help us a little bit with the court if he appoints those 8 judges?
The president is being very diligent about identifying judges who believe in the Constitution, who are originalists, and do not believe in legislating from the bench. It's following the law and interpreting the law correctly. And he's doing a very good job of that. At this point, he has appointed and had confirmed more judges than any president in recent history. And I'm very much looking forward to his appointments to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. As you well know, and those of us who live out here in the crazy West, it's often referred to as the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals because they are so often overturned by the United States Supreme Court, the most overturned appellate court in the entire federal system. So it is important. I am very hopeful that President Trump will be appointing very conservative judges to this bench, and decisions will be going differently than we've seen in the recent past.
Now, Judge Reinhardt was one of the notoriously liberal judges on the court, and so his passing leaves an opening for, as you said, it's a kangaroo court. If he just appointed a conservative kangaroo, we'd be in good shape. But there's a lot of other judicial picks he's making that are in lower courts. I mean, they're in the federal court system, but not necessarily in the Supreme Court or the appellate courts. How important in your mind are President Trump's picks right now for the federal court system?
They are probably the single most important thing that President Trump is doing right now. If he were to mess up on everything else that he does, but he does continues to do an excellent job in appointing Constitution-believing judges to all levels, either federal district courts to appellate court positions, and certainly like he did with Justice Gorsuch in the Supreme Court, the lasting impact on our rights, and in particular on the Second Amendment, will be for generations to come. So remember, it's the lower court justices who hear the cases originally, and then those cases are appealed to the circuit courts, and then those cases, if they're challenged, they go to the Supreme Court. So every step of the way is very important, and typically they get Supreme Court justices from the field of appellate court justices, and appellate court justices from the field of district court justices. So every one of those important appointments is incredibly important.
And this brings up the subject of the election in November because it's a midterm. Traditionally, my understanding is that whatever party holds the White House tends to lose some ground in the midterm where the Congress is concerned, although that's not always the case. And I would think, given the fact that the Senate is really the body that really appoints those justices or approves those justices for the president, that ultimately it would seem to me that the important thing would be that we elect more conservatives to both the Senate and the House, but in particular to the Senate. Do I have the way that works correct in my head?
That's correct. The justices are vetted and approved by the United States Senate. Senator Feinstein in the past, as every other United States senator had, by tradition, they were able to veto president's recommendations to the appellate courts and to the bench. they had a veto ability. But President Trump is not sticking to that tradition. There is no law, no regulation. That was just the way it was done, out of courtesy. And in my opinion, it was a big mistake to use that policy. And then the president is ignoring that and continuing to appoint people that reflect the law the way he believes the law should be interpreted and read. So that's a really good thing.
So many people now are under the impression that we're losing the battle for the Second Amendment, and I'm not so sure that's the case. But I'm curious. You kind of have your finger on the pulse of it much more than I do. What is your view of that?
I think that everything that we have seen as a result of the shooting in Florida has been generated and held up by a fervent media effort to elevate the words and positions of the students that they are highlighting, that they are training, that they are paying to go out and speak before the public. And I'm finding that the same dynamic is occurring that happened in the last presidential election. Everybody was saying that Mrs. Clinton was going to win by a long shot. All of the newspapers, all of the surveys said so. But I sensed that there was a huge undercurrent amongst Americans that said, no, we're going to attend by the tens of thousands the rallies put on by this presidential candidate, now President Trump, and we're going to support him. And when push comes to shove and nobody's looking, we're going to vote for him. And I'm seeing that the same thing is happening now. And why do I say that? Because the month of March we saw a huge spike in the number of guns that were sold and transferred nationwide. That could not be accounted for anything more than there is a great awakening amongst people who own guns. They want to have them. They're going to make sure that they're going to have them. They're going to buy them, and they're going to be prepared to use them. So I think that the true undercurrent is not reflected in anything we see in the media, and I think that we have a very good chance of not seeing the midterm swoon that many presidents have.
You know, somebody asked me recently, why is it that the liberals always have these huge rallies and the Second Amendment folks' rallies aren't as big? Well, I submit that it's because the Second Amendment rally folks are law-abiding, hardworking Americans, and they have to be at work. And they're not getting paid to fly all over the place and do this stuff. You know what I mean?
You are absolutely exactly right. I've been around since 1980. I've seen many rallies, most of them on the part of the other side. And what happens? They're bussed in, they're flown in, their hotels are paid for, they're given pre-printed signs, they're given pre-printed scripts to use when they go before the legislature. These people don't have jobs. Our people are the law-abiding. They can't take 2 days off of work if they live in San Diego County to drive all the way to Sacramento to be there for a 2-hour rally or 3-hour rally and speak to the members of the legislature for 30 minutes and then go back home to work. Because if you do it on a weekend, nobody's there. None of the legislators are there. They don't see the power of the rally. They don't see the enthusiasm. They don't speak to the people that are attending. So in order to have an effective rally, which is what the left always does, is they have it during the week, during a time when the legislators are there and present. And you're right, our people are working in school, taking care of their families, doing everything that they need to do, their businesses, to live and survive. And that's why the type of rally that is reported in the media is not about our type of people. Our people are the people that make America run and work.
What is happening in Sacramento right now? It seems like every legislative session they're coming after us with new stuff. What's going on?
They are now doing things like they're making it, they have a bill that would make it illegal to hold a raffle with the gun being a prize. So that means that every, gun club, every Friends of the NRA dinner, every California Waterfowl or Ducks Unlimited or California Deer Association or Safari Club, none of these people, whether they're conservation or whether they're for training and safety programs or for the political action side of it, would be allowed to have a raffle with a gun being a prize, it would put many organizations out of business. That's how they survive. And they know that. That's why they're going after that. They want to force CCW instructors to teach classes to a certain minimum number of hours, and they want to force them to have a shooting component, something that is presently not required by law, but is required by virtually every sheriff in the state. And they would make the standards for the shooting component public and open to public scrutiny. So that is a huge attack on sheriffs and on CCW holders and CCW instructors. They're doing what they can to disrupt the system, and they know they can't get rid of it, so they're going to try to make it more onerous and more open to their attacks. Golly, the list just goes on and on. They're expanding those people who can file a gun violence restraining order. They're making it illegal for anyone under 21 years of age to purchase a long gun. It's already illegal for them to purchase a handgun, but now they want to ban them from buying long guns. So a youngster can go into the Marines at 17, fight for our country using all manner of munitions and firearms, and then they come back home after a couple of years in the field, and if they get out early and they're still under 21, they would not be allowed by the state of California to protect themselves in their own home. This is the kind of gobbledygook that they're trying to jam through here in the legislature. We're following 40 different bills.
You know, this is again the nanny state up in Sacramento going bananas. Now, you mentioned two other things. One was the long gun ban, which I think most people know that they're trying to ban the sale of long guns to young men and women who can serve their country and die for their country but don't buy a gun, which baffles me. But the other thing you mentioned was these red flag laws, and that's what people are calling them now, the gun violence restraining order. First of all, I don't know, is that now law, or is it something that's working through the...
It is a law in the state of California, the gun violence restraining orders. It was developed after the Santa Barbara shooting where a kid went and stabbed his two roommates to death, jumped in a vehicle, ran over and killed a bunch of kids in Isla Vista, and then got out and shot, I believe, one or two people, and then shot himself. His parents had informed the police that they thought he was mentally disturbed. Police came out and did a check on him, a welfare check, and found him to be fine. His parents didn't know that he was a gun owner, a legal gun owner, and therefore could not have requested a gun violence restraining order unless they knew he had a gun, if the law was in effect. Well, this was the impetus for creating the law. They put it on the books. It's been around for a couple of years now. As of right now, it has been used maybe, I believe, less than 100 times. As far as we can tell, it has not been wrongfully used or abused. There have been no charges filed by those who have had it issued against them for it being done improperly. So we're watching this. But I think what they're trying to do is, in effect, stigmatize the gun issue and allow other people to be identifiers for gun violence restraining orders. Right now, it's only immediate family members. But immediate family members includes anybody who lived with the person over the last 6 months. So if he was in a fraternity over the last 6 months, he lived in there with 40, 50 guys. They were all considered family members, and any one of them could have requested. And the GVRO is issued almost de rigueur. If it's requested, it's issued. The problem that we have is always due process. If there is, we've got laws on the books, the 5150 codes and regular restraining order laws on the books that already would allow for anybody to file a restraining order against somebody who they think is a danger to themselves or others. We've got them in place, but what they're trying to do is take the effect and impact of those laws and stigmatize them specifically for guns. Even though they're doing, in essence, the same thing that existing laws do, it is the gun in particular that they're pointing at, and trying to make the guns look evil and bad, and we got to get rid of them because we have crazy people out there, and we can't stop crazy people from getting guns, so we have to get rid of guns. They don't think about, well, maybe we ought to think about treating crazy people.
That somebody can just arbitrarily say, oh, I think he's a little scary, take away his constitutional right.
Right.
Is pretty frightening. And I know they're trying to do this on there are certain people in Congress trying to do this on a national level. Are there currently are there any lawsuits that are being filed against this, or are we waiting for somebody who's got standing? Or
yeah, there are several legal issues that the lawyers are looking at. Somebody with standing, misuse of the law, so they're investigating every time that the law has been utilized to see if it was not properly used, and it is coming. The easiest thing to file a lawsuit on is the 21-day requirement before you can go to a judge and get your due process. I think the Supreme Court had said very clearly in the past that a right delayed is a right denied, and that is exactly what is happening when they don't allow you to go to court immediately to give your case, and you have to wait 21 days before you are allowed to go to court to make your case to show that this was improperly done, or that there is some sort of an error here, and that you are not a danger to yourself or others.
The California legislature being what it is, I don't think they have their supermajority anymore. I think too many of them have been imprisoned. I think some of them, isn't that how they lost it? Is a couple of them ended up going to jail?
There have been multiple accusations of sexual harassment in both houses of the legislature, and a sufficient number of Democrats have had to leave their office or requested to leave their office that they have lost their supermajority. And golly, even though we couldn't do it, God found a way to make it happen.
I was going to make a comment, but I'm going to keep it to myself. Okay, so let's look at some of these races that are going on.
Okay.
I know in the governor's race, I extended an offer to Travis Allen to come on the show, and went back and forth with his staff a little bit, and they wanted to do it and then had to beg off, and I've never heard from him again, unfortunately. But that may be because I'm little and, go talk to the big guys first. I get it. But I may extend it again. I have noticed recently it looks like they're getting more traction, he and John Cox, and that John Cox actually getting a little bit more traction. It seems that Travis Allen is very, very conservative in his statements. I don't know about his voting record. And that John Cox, who doesn't have a voting record, he's never served in public office, but has run a couple of times in the past unsuccessfully, has stated that he is very conservative, particularly in the areas of finances and fiscal things, and also in the area of the Second Amendment. But I don't, like I said, you've got your finger on the pulse of this stuff. Is there anything you can tell me about these two guys? Because
sure.
Here's why I asked the question. If we really want to have somebody viable running for governor, we're probably going to have to all get behind one or the other one. If we get behind both of them, we're going to split the vote, and then we got our choices are gone.
Right. So let's go over what I perceive to be as facts. Number one, Travis Allen has a 100% pro-gun voting record in the legislature. He has sponsored pro-gun bills. So his position and defense of the Second Amendment is unassailable. I've had the opportunity to sit down for quite an extended period of time and have a chat with Mr. Cox, with John Cox, and we extensively talked about the Second Amendment. And I can tell you this, Joe, this guy understands the Second Amendment totally. And in his, we gave him an A rating on the Second Amendment. That's the highest rating we could give. Travis Allen has an A rating based on his track record. And I don't think that you're going to find much of a differentiation on where they stand on the Second Amendment. And neither one is more Second Amendmenter than the other one. They are both. Here are some more facts. Two surveys released yesterday showed that John Cox is now in second place above Assemblyman or Mayor Villaraigosa, and that Travis Allen was just behind in fourth place. And the other survey showed that John Cox and Travis Allen were both ahead of Villaraigosa. So you're right. We have to somehow coalesce around one candidate and bring him to the top so that he can run against Gavin Newsom, who is way ahead of everybody. Not way ahead. He's got 30%. He's at 30%.
Yeah, everybody talks about him like he's unbeatable. That dude's not unbeatable.
There is no one that's unbeatable.
That guy's not unbeatable. This is not a presidential election. Turnout tends to be lower.
Correct.
These kind of elections. If gun owners simply turn out in volume and vote, it's very possible we can make sure that Gavin Newsom doesn't end up in the governor's
You
chair.
are absolutely right, Joe. Remember, in Prop 63, where we lost, we had 5 million people vote with us. Yes, 8 million people voted on their side. But if you have a reduced turnout, it's typically their people who turn out much lower than our people. And if we can get that same 5 million people to come and turn out and vote pro-gun, we can do amazing things in the state of California. And people thought it was a miracle that President Trump was elected. Same thing could happen here in California. But it would be a miracle, but it can happen, absolutely.
There's some other stuff going on in the state which I think kind of dovetails with the Second Amendment, maybe. Okay. Because what I'm seeing is a lot of anger about this car and gas tax stuff. I'm also hearing a lot of anger about the sanctuary state stuff. And it's gotten to a point where it's almost hit a boiling point with some folks. And I'm wondering if that level of frustration with the current leadership in the state, I wonder if that isn't a positive note for the Second Amendment and replacing some of these folks in Sacramento who are in support of the taxes and the sanctuary stuff. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
There's no question that those two are very hot button issues right now, especially, the radical left is finally affecting and touching even the lower income people. This gas tax is affecting them more than anyone else. When somebody is of low income and they drive to work and they have gone from $2.19 a gallon of gasoline to $3.75 a gallon or more, some places I've seen as high as $4, that is stripping them of it's hammering them back into further poverty. And I think that there's a boiling point where they're going to say, enough is enough. We can't do this. These people that we keep voting for are the ones who are taking money out of our pockets. It's got to change. And the fact that now I believe there are 8 political subdivisions, that cities and counties, that have now declared that they are going to be free of sanctuary status. I think that is a growing trend, and they don't do it because they want to. They do it because their constituents, the local constituents who elect them, these are the most direct elected people possible, the city council members and the supervisors. They have the closest contact to the voters. They are being pressured by their voters to get out of the sanctuary state status. And I think we're going to see that grow. And that hot button is cutting across all lines. There are Hispanic-rich communities that are saying, no, this is wrong. We cannot be sanctuary cities or sanctuary counties. And the fact that is happening is very important and telltale that these two hot button issues can make a difference if they are voiced properly by good statesmen who are running for office as to what these issues are and who it is that's supporting them. I think that we can see a lot of change in who is elected. Yes.
Which brings me to the next discussion, which you mentioned. We were talking about CCW earlier.
Yes.
I am an infuriating person because I'm in San Diego, California, and I have a CCW permit. And if I meet the other guy that's got one, we can start a club.
In a phone booth.
Yeah, that's right, in a phone booth. Sheriff Gore does issue them, but he's really kind of sticky about it. But lately, because he's running against a guy, Dave Myers, who's actually an officer or commander in the Sheriff's Department, who has said openly that if he becomes sheriff, that he considers personal protection good cause enough to be issued a permit. All of a sudden, Sheriff Gore has been issuing more and pandering a little bit. So he's been making the process a lot easier. I think he's a little afraid of Dave Myers. But the sheriff's races that I'm aware of are where there appears to be a contestant who is pro CCW, would be San Diego, and again, that's Dave Myers, whom I've not spoken to, but I would love to have him come on the show. And then Bob Lindsay up in LA, and I have spoken to his campaign, and we did set a time and date, but it didn't work out, so I'll have to contact them again. And then Don Barnes in Orange County, I think, is the undersheriff currently.
Yes.
And unfortunately, Sheriff Hutchins is retiring. I think she's got some illness or something.
Yes.
These three folks, am I correct? It seems to me these three folks have all indicated that they would be what you would call essentially shall issue. And if that's correct, please correct me. But also, are there other sheriff's races going on in the state with those kind of candidates that we should be aware of?
There are sheriff's races throughout the state of California. And if people want to know which of particularly the incumbent sheriffs and then which of the challengers, which we will be adding next, are throughout the state of California, they'll be able to go to our website at gunownersca.com, and we're going to post all of the incumbent sheriffs that we are supporting, those that are constitutional sheriffs. The fact of the matter is that you described the situation in San Diego very accurately. It's pretty amazing that Sheriff Gore is now all of a sudden kind of loosening up the pocket there and letting some more go out, but it is election time. And you have to take his tenure in total to gauge where he stands on the issue. And frankly, the scales tip heavily on the anti-CCW side. So his motivation, I don't know. His opponent is it's interesting to look at all of the people that are endorsing him. You would think that they'd be a lot of the more democratic and left-leaning organizations and groups, but the fact of the matter is that he has professed to be a pro-CCW believing sheriff. Says a lot. It doesn't matter who's supporting you if you believe in that, because that means that people will be able to protect their lives. In Orange County, Barnes, he's overseen the CCW system in Orange County since they pre-lawsuit and post-lawsuit, and they have gone from 6 or 7,000 CCWs to now over 14,000 CCWs in Orange County. They're issuing them faster and more efficiently there than ever before, and it's probably the single highest producing CCW county in the state. So, and he's in charge of it, and he's running against another former sheriff, Harrington, who has professed fidelity to the Second Amendment. I've met with him. He sounds great on the Second Amendment. It's going to be a tough issue, but it's kind of hard to beat the fact that the undersheriff right now has streamlined the process and made it easier, more convenient for people to acquire a CCW legally in Orange County. And there's a lot to be said for that.
Sheriffs in general, sheriffs are the only law enforcement official that's elected. Police chiefs are not. They're hired by the city council, mayor, or whatever.
That's correct.
But you elect a sheriff. How important are sheriff's elections beyond CCW? Are sheriff's elections also important for where other aspects of the Second Amendment are concerned? And if so, how and why?
Absolutely. Um, the election of the sheriff, I would argue, is probably the single most important election that somebody can participate in. This is the person who's going to have the most impact and influence on our personal safety in our own homes, in our own businesses, in our own communities. That supersedes so much more. That's deep down local and personal. How his officers and deputies apply the law. They have a fair amount of latitude and judgment that they can apply when they are investigating a potential crime or somebody who did something wrong or made a mistake. They have a wide latitude as to how to apply the law. And you want a sheriff who is a part of the community and understands that there are people that need to be controlled. They're called criminals, and you throw the law at them. And then there's the rest of the community that is law-abiding and sometimes inadvertently come close to breaking the law or need some help and direction. And that's where the police can be of great help and influence in to set a person straight for the rest of their lives, actually. And that is so important. And that comes from the sheriff. The sheriff is the one who instills into their deputies and their staff the perspective that they're going to have and the approach they're going to have to the law. So it is, in my opinion, the sheriff is president and sheriff, and then, everybody else after that, really. That's how important it is.
I'm a member of IACP, the International Association of Chiefs of Police, which I remain a member of, even though they're an incredibly left-leaning organization, anti-Second Amendment organization. But sometimes you want to be members of these things so you know what they're doing.
Yes.
However, the sheriff's associations, it has been my experience, tend to be very conservative by comparison. Is that the case in California?
Absolutely. I know for a fact that the single largest fellowship or friendship of sheriffs, elected sheriffs in the state of California, I call them our constitutional sheriffs, are the largest group of sheriffs. They are conservative across the board. It's out of character for a left-leaning liberal to be pro-Second Amendment. If you're pro-Second Amendment, by and large, you tend to be far more conservative, far more freedom-loving, far more Constitution-believing, and that goes across all areas of interaction.
And speaking of which, and back into San Diego County again, we're having a battle now over the Crossroads to the West gun show that has been happening in Del Mar since 3 days before Dirt, and is extremely well attended and is a very popular event and a really neat gun show. And I understand that there's a battle going on there. Can you explain what's happening with that?
Sure. The very vocal minority, and many of them aren't even local to that neck of the woods, are screaming and yelling and making all kinds of noise to the members of the board that oversee the operation of the Del Mar fairgrounds. They're calling for a ban on gun shows at Del Mar, and it doesn't matter that they're legal. It doesn't matter that California holds the safest, cleanest, most trouble-free gun shows in America. It doesn't matter that no one's been arrested for violating a gun law at a gun show in the state of California in, I don't know, dozen years.
At least, yeah, at least.
It's been
well, there's always a bazillion sheriff's deputies at the show too. So I mean,
yeah, and you go and see the deputies, and they're looking around to see what kind of cool guns are out there.
Yeah, they are.
They're not there trying to find criminals because they know nobody's going to break the law.
There aren't any, right?
So it's a very vocal minority can always garner attention, and that's what's happening right now. And if the board buckles to the cry and hue of the vocal minority, they're falling victims to the roost that it really is. It is a bunch of people who are being paid for by the Bloombergs, by the all of the billionaires that they have their own personal protection. They have their own guns. They have their own $1 million security systems and security guards and all of that stuff. But they don't think that we should be able to protect ourselves with our own guns in our own homes. Therefore, we're going to spend some of our pocket change, which ends up being millions of dollars, to take away that right of those of us who are not intelligent enough to use guns properly, which is their perspective and why they fund these protests. And that's what's happening. And hopefully the board members will not be weak-kneed and buckle to the vocal pressure.
Now, I asked you a bunch of questions, Sam. Is there anything else going on in the state of California that I've missed that you might want to highlight? Because, like I said, you've got your finger on the pulse of it, and I don't.
Well, you know that Gun Owners of California, we have been kind of the leaders in the election side of things, and we are coming up to an election here, and we're going to have some very important races in the California State Senate and in the California State Assembly, as well as sheriff's races, where we are going to be concentrating a lot of attention to make sure that the legislature does not get another supermajority, and that we elect some people that will be willing to stand up and fight vocally on the floor of the respective houses to support the Second Amendment. And that information is about to be released. We're compiling it right now, and in the next week or two, people will get their newsletters. It'll be up on our website. We know that the other pro-gun organizations are right there with us to display all of the information. And I just got an alert today from our friends over at the National Rifle Association, California Rifle and Pistol Association, that their attorneys filed a federal lawsuit challenging California's ammunition sales restrictions.
Oh, hallelujah.
Finally, we got this lawsuit in place. We've been working with them and coordinating with them. We will be supporting that lawsuit. That's our portion of the legal fight, is supporting these lawsuits with friend of the court briefs as they move along the process in order to strengthen the main lawsuits that are filed by our friends and partners. There's a new bill that would require anybody who buys precursor parts for guns, they would have to go through a background check and a waiting period and pay a fee before they buy. These are precursor parts: the pins, the springs, the trigger groups, the barrels, the slides, the uppers, the lowers. Basically, any part that you buy for your gun, you would have to go to a licensed dealer and do a background check and a waiting period in order to buy your parts. It's crazy.
You mentioned something that I think is extremely important, and I don't know if you knew it or not.
What's that?
And so I just want you to clarify. You were talking about how you work together and in concert with other organizations,
Yes,
like CRP. And how closely do the various gun rights organizations in California actually work together on some of this stuff?
That is a great question, and it's not a secret. We have finally, all of us, and I'm talking about NRA, CRPA, Gun Owners of California, FPC.
Now, that's the Firearms Policy Coalition, isn't it?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yes, and Cal Guns Foundation, even to a smaller extent, Second Amendment Foundation, as far as the largest of the groups. We have finally come to realize that we all approach our fight to protect the Second Amendment in California from a different perspective, but a different strength, something that we are better at or more capable of doing than the other groups. And that doesn't make us better than the other groups. It makes us an essential part of the fight in order to accomplish what each and every one of us wants to do. Gun Owners of California, we don't have the financial resources to file $50,000 or $150,000 or $300,000 lawsuits like the National Rifle Association in conjunction with the CRPA Foundation and the Cal Guns Foundation in cooperation with the Firearms Policy Coalition. Together they can file those lawsuits. But what we can do and bring to the table that is so important is we can raise $15,000 to pay for a friend of the court brief that is almost as long as the lawsuit itself, done by a top pro-Second Amendment constitutional attorney in the country to support and add body to the lawsuits that have been filed. And that is incredibly important. How important? Well, in two Supreme Court cases, as a Supreme Court justice directly quoted one of our amicus briefs. So they read them, and they are important in helping them to make decisions. We started in 1975, created by Senator H.L. Richardson, who wanted to elect more pro-gunners to the legislature after the legislature realized that they had the ability to legislate on firearms. Prior to that, there were very few gun laws. And so we became very good at elections. And so we are kind of the leadership portion of the pro-gun community and helping everybody on the election side of, which is the important thing. We've also been in the legislature the longest on the lobbying side, but everybody has strength in lobbying. Every one of those organizations together, we all have lobbyists and we all work together. And if we weren't working together, we couldn't cover the spectrum of laws, because like over the past 2 weeks, there have been gun bills that we had to testify on in 3 separate committees that were all going on at exactly the same time. So what we do is we divvy up the responsibilities, and it's not uncommon to find a Firearms Policy Coalition lobbyist saying in conjunction with Gun Owners of California or California Rifle and Pistol Association and NRA, and us doing the same thing. I'm Sam Paredes representing Gun Owners of California, and also Firearms Policy Coalition or National Shooting Sports Foundation or CRPA, because those lobbyists are in another committee testifying on other bills. So we are working together very closely. So yes, in the lobbying, very closely, in elections, very closely, in the courts, very closely. So what your listeners need to understand is that there's no room out there to criticize any group that's out there and what they're doing. Every one of our organizations, I can tell you, are working from their strength to add body to our fight to protect and restore the Constitution in the state of California, in particular, the Second Amendment. And if you say, well, how can I support everybody? Well, you know what? You don't have to. Pick one of the organizations that is doing the job that most closely aligns with what you would like to see done, and support them. And we're not asking you to send hundreds and hundreds and thousands of dollars. We're asking you to send the cost of a box of ammunition a year, $35 to any one of our organizations, make you a member for the year. And understand that we don't have any billionaires that are giving us $100,000 contributions or $1 million contributions. We exist. The gun community and the pro-gun effort in California exists. Gun owners in California, in particular, since 1975, on a $35 a year member. Nothing else. We don't get anything from the industry. We don't get anything from manufacturers. We get some support for our fundraisers with donated items or low-cost items that we can raffle off or something like that. But it is your listener, it is our members who are carrying the entire weight, the entire load of fighting for the Second Amendment here in the state of California. For that, we are humbled, and we need to encourage people to stay engaged. Because that's the only way that we're going to make progress.
One of the things I try to do, I live in California, and I have people say, well, why don't you just leave? No, I'm not leaving. This is my home. And I intend to fight for it, and I'm not going anywhere. By the way, I am a member of the Gun Owners of California. And if you're not a member of Gun Owners of California, you should be. You need to be. I'm going to put a link in the description so that you can join Gun Owners of California, because one of the things that Sam did not say that he's really, really good at, and he is extremely good at, and I think just, a little more humble than he needs to be, is the man spends an inordinate amount of time at the Capitol lobbying. And he's very good at it. And he's been doing it a very, very long time. And he's better at it than most. And it's important that we support him, because you and I can't go. We're working. But he can go. So, and his team can go. And yes, NRA, CRPA are filing those big, big lawsuits. But we also need those people who are at the Capitol day in, day out, talking to legislators on our behalf, wringing hands and keeping the effort alive. So if you're not a member of Gun Owners of California, please join. You should know something else about gun owners as well. There's Gun Owners of America, which you should be a member of as well. And they cover all the states of the union except one, California. So if you want to help in California, whether you're in California or not, join Gun Owners of California for $35. Okay, so you didn't go to Starbucks every day this week and you joined Gun Owners of California. You didn't buy lunch with your friend this week and you joined Gun Owners of California. Where's your money better spent? So, Sam, I'm going to put a link in the description. I'm going to put one on our website. And by George, we're going to see if we can stir up some more membership for you. You are a great human being and a good friend, and I'm very grateful that you come on the show and give us the information that we really need. And we hopefully we can do this again. It would be my desire to do so.
I am looking forward to it very much so. And I'll tell you what, our folks are waking up. Last Friday we had our annual crab feed and tri-tip dinner in Sacramento. It's our premier fundraising event, and with well over a week to go, it was totally sold out at 500 people. We raffled off and auctioned off, I believe it was upwards of 70 guns, high quality guns, and we had a great time. But what it told me is that people understand that their rights are being attacked, and they're willing to come out now even more than they have in the past. There were a lot of new people who got involved, who came out, and I think that those numbers are growing. I appreciate your support, and if I remember correctly, you spent more than a $9mm box of ammunition in supporting your membership, and which we are greatly appreciative of. Love your show. Please continue to be our voice out there. You communicate to so many people, and the one thing that eliminates darkness and it's light. And your show is a whole lot of light out there. So thank you. And it's a pleasure to be your friend.
I am firmly of the belief that if we all get together, we can take this state back.
Agreed.
100%. People say it isn't possible, but I don't believe that. You know, this morning in my quiet time, I'm a Christian. This morning in my quiet time, I was reading the story of David and Goliath. Mm-hmm. And it was really funny because just as Goliath entered the scene, my 6'6", 285-pound son had come on over and walked in the front door. And I said, oh my gosh. But you know, that story is replayed over and over again symbolically in battles that people fight where they feel like there's no way to win. The odds are against them and there's nothing they can do. And that's where we are. We're in that place in California. This is our David and Goliath story. Mm-hmm. And you know what? We got to pick up our staff and grab 5 stones and get our sling and go win it. If we do that together, I think we can. Thank you very much again, Sam, for being on the show. I really appreciate it. And thank you very much for taking the time to watch. I realize it's a long interview and it's here in its entirety. I'm not going to edit it much except maybe to shorten some of the long-winded things I say. And please do join Gun Owners of California. There is a link in the description. And this is going to be available obviously on YouTube, BitChute, which I have to say carefully so I don't sound like I'm saying something else. It'll be up on Vimeo here pretty soon. It'll also be on Facebook, on our Facebook page. And you will also find it on Dailymotion. So if for some reason you can't get it to play on one of those, go to the other one. It'll be in all of those different places. Thank you again for watching. Thank you for all of your support. Obviously, GunGuyTV is 100% member, or not even member, but viewer supported. So if you want to help us out, that's fine too. But honestly, I'd rather you put your money toward joining Gun Owners of California, to be honest. So please do that first. Have a great week. Thank you again, and be safe.